Geek Therapy Radio.
Welcome to Geek Therapy Radio. I am, of course, your mental curator, Johnny Hemberger. Thank you so much for listening to the Geek Therapy Radio podcast. I always mean that from the bottom of my heart. If you'd like to subscribe to the Geek Therapy Radio podcast, I would love that. And I would also love it if you'd share it with your friends if you like what I'm doing here. First and foremost, here at Geek Therapy Radio, I love to remind you that you are worthy of love. You are worthy of giving love, and you are worthy of receiving love. And I know it's difficult to grasp sometimes, but you are also worthy of your own self-respect. And that is the aim of what I do here at Geek Therapy Radio, is I celebrate the geek in all of us. We're all geeks about something. And I think a good way to chip away at our own self-confidence and gaining self-confidence and self-respect is by engaging in a good bit of geek therapy. So whether you're into building PCs, new PCs, old PCs, whether you're into building cars or building airplanes or playing the violin or whatever your geek thing is, you have a home here in Geek Therapy Radio, and I remind you that you are loved and you are worthy of your own self-respect. So today on Geek Therapy Radio, I have Clint from Lazy Game Reviews. He's a friend of the show. He's been on several times in the past. Be sure to go check out those very well-titled and meticulously titled titles in the past archives of Geek Therapy Radio. Just scroll down and you'll see them there. But anyways, Clint and I have a very real conversation this week. Yes, we talk about Half-Life Alyx, and yes, we talk about Doom Eternal and Animal Crossing and a few other geek things. But we're doing things a little bit different in the podcast this week. I am not just uploading the 39-minute edited broadcast version that has aired over the weekend here on Houston AM radio. I'm making the full unedited version available here as the podcast. It's over an hour and 30 minutes, something like that. And the reason I'm doing that, usually I have unedited interviews available only to my Patreons on Patreon. But as you will hear, at some point, Clint and I get very real. We start going off the cuff, and we start relating to you. We start relating to each other because we're all going through something very similar here in the United States and in our global community. We're all dealing with COVID-19 and the coronavirus, and it's affecting every single person who's listening to this, both with quarantine and social distancing and just general fear and anxiety. So Clint and I, we get into all of that. So I'm making that available to everybody, not just patrons on Patreon. I believe it's more important that everybody have access to the conversation that Clint and I have. So without further ado, here is the complete, unedited interview I had this week with friend of the show, Clint from Lazy Game Reviews on YouTube. My guest today is Clint from Lazy Game Reviews, LGR on YouTube, Lazy Game Reviews on YouTube. And Clint, are you considered essential personnel at LGR?
Unfortunately, yeah, I think so.
Okay, so that is the understatement of the month. Hopefully not too many more months. But otherwise, other than being socially distanced from the show right now over the telephone, how are you doing out there?
I mean, it's just decent. Everything is pretty much the same on my end. I work from home anyway, so there is that. It's just the lack of anything else other than being at home. It's kind of starting to get in my head just a little bit, drilling in there and just kind of wishing I could go to a coffee shop or something, but nope.
So I was thinking, realizing that today, actually, as I was driving to work, I have this card that was given to me, apparently on behalf of some government organizations. It looks like a serious card that says, hey, if you're ever pulled over, just show them this thing, and that'll guarantee you, essential personnel or whatever kind of passage. I don't foresee that happening, but it's like I have this pass. I feel like I've been given the key to the country pretty much. I can go anywhere, just flash them. Hey, I'm supposed to be here. Why? Radio stuff for whatever that matters. But yeah, my life actually hasn't been that much different other than, like everybody else, can't find toilet paper and a lot of stores are closed. But, day to day, like you, I guess it's pretty similar.
Yeah, we've got odd jobs, I suppose. But, we've got my brother, one of my best friends, they both lost their jobs this past week. So it's like, I'm definitely seeing it as well, just within my immediate community. Just like, oh, man.
Yeah.
People being let go and just, not being able to take care of anything at all in terms of their own, business or incomes or school or whatever. It's a weird time.
Yeah, that's the other thing about all this is we each have our own unique kind of experiences with what we're going through right now, and where a lot of us, quote unquote, essential personnel complain about our jobs, we are very thankful now that we are, that we do have to, quote unquote, go to work, because it means a secure paycheck. And there's a lot of people right now who don't have that guarantee. But let's try to distract them, hopefully just a little bit, because I don't know, it's very weird. It's very odd that simultaneously, while this is happening in our country and around the world, there have been some amazing games that have come out and sales on Steam and all sorts of access to streaming media and video games and free content and everything like that. And the two biggest ones to come out within the past, I believe it's the past week, the past 7 days among this quarantine is, first I think it was Doom Eternal, and then shortly after Half-Life Alyx, a few days after that. So gamers stuck at home, as long as you can pay your electricity bill, then you have access to, Half-Life Alyx and Doom Eternal. So Clint, do you want to talk about those games a little bit?
Yeah, and then the third one too. I don't know if we're not going to talk about it, but Animal Crossing. Horizons one. That has just been going. Honestly, that's all I've been playing ever since I played through Doom Eternal and Half-Life Alyx. But it's like, all of these just hit at the same time, just like top-notch interactive content. Mm-hmm. And it could not have hit at a better moment. That's for sure. If you're a gamer, these are the things. That's about as good as you can get, or as good as you can ask for in terms of interactive moments. Yeah.
Do you follow Quinn from Snazzy Labs at all on Twitter or anything like that?
Oh yeah, I talk to him sometimes.
Yeah, he posted up on Twitter from Animal Crossing. He says, "Holy crap, there's a reel-to-reel in Animal Crossing," and that got my attention. Yeah.
There's a lot. I've got in my Animal Crossing house. I've got a tape player, a vinyl record set up, sweet, and an old school movie reel-to-reel film projector, and there's a lot of just odd little knickknacks and things that you can find. Just a lot of it just comes floating out of the sky, and you pop it with a slingshot. There's a balloon, and you pop the balloon, and all of a sudden there's hi-fi coming out of the sky. It's great.
It's an LGR paradise just dropping right out of the sky. What would you say out of the three most notable titles to come out in the past week or so? What have you played the most?
Probably Animal Crossing. Okay. With Doom Eternal being the second place there, just because I did a review on that, so I probably put a bit more into that than I normally would. I wanted to give a really good, thorough couple of playthroughs. Yeah. But yeah, just in terms of just screwing around, it's living on an island, collecting old hi-fi out of the sky.
It's I might title the podcast "Hi-Fi Out of the Sky" with LGR. So
may as well, yeah.
So we'll get back to Animal Crossing probably. Doom Eternal. Now I need to have a caveat here. I need full disclosure. I need to let the audience know full disclosure. I have not played Doom Eternal, nor have I played Half-Life Alyx yet. So it goes without saying we're gonna try not to give any spoilers here. If we do give spoilers, I will of course, edit that out, or give clear heads up for it. But we're not going to give away any spoilers. So Clint, don't give any spoilers to me because I haven't played them yet. I have mentioned Half-Life Alyx. I have put Half-Life Alyx on the radar of my listeners for months now, but I haven't actually played it yet. My Oculus Rift is, kid you not, 18 inches from my knee right now. The headset's just crying, "Please put me on and put on Half-Life Alyx." So tell us, what is your non-spoiler review, kind of your non-spoiler thoughts on Half-Life Alyx?
Well, I mean, I'm a really big fan of Half-Life, and in more particular Half-Life 2. I was always more drawn to that side of the universe, that kind of the lore, the setting and everything. Mm-hmm. And as a fan of that, I was just so very pleased with it. Mm-hmm. And the, just in terms of the setting alone, returning to City 17 and seeing all of that in its just gigantic virtual reality scale is, it is an experience for sure. And I mean, that's just the first minute of the game.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Once you start diving into the meat of it, the physics, Half-Life is sort of known for its physics, and this takes it to just another entire dimension.
Mm-hmm. Literally.
It's a good evolution of it, but it feels very thoroughly Half-Life.
So what is your setup for playing Half-Life, Alyx?
I've got a Valve Index.
Okay. It's for several different platforms. I saw, and I haven't looked too deeply into this, the Oculus Quest, which I don't know how exactly they do that, just that there's an asterisk by it for Half-Life, or what is it? Gosh, I'm blanking out. For the Oculus Quest. So it's multi-platform, and one of the one of the gripes, I guess you could call it, gripe and complaint, is that enough difference?
Same thing.
Yeah, is that it's a AAA title. By many reports, it puts VR on the map. The VR has been around for quite a while now, but a lot of people are saying that this is the definitive VR game thus far. Would you agree with that?
For sure. That is no hesitation right there. I have played, everything VR as far back as this whole current generation of VR goes. I had the first development kits and everything for the original Oculus, and moved on to the Vive, and all the things in between. I've had all those things, and I've played just about every major VR game. And when this one comes along, I was kind of expecting it to be another really cool VR experience, like a nice polished little thing where you go into it and you're just like, it's an experience. But no, This is a straight up game.
Right.
Like, this is 15 something hours, in depth, really complex, tons of exploration, full on first person action puzzle shooter. It is a Valve game through and through, with all the lessons that they've learned, putting together these headsets, learning how they work, what does work, what doesn't work, and some boundary pushing ideas for sure in terms of the way that you're interacting with some of these environments and the puzzles and whatnot. Like, I was at, whatever it was, years ago, PAX 2015 or something, where they were showing off the HTC Vive back then, and they had this really cool demo where you were in Aperture Science and you're going through and doing these puzzles while GLaDOS is taunting you in the background. And some of those puzzles, some of the same designs are used almost exactly in Half-Life Alyx. And so
awesome.
You can kind of see their evolution of what they've been doing for the past half decade or so. And it's just culminated in this extremely polished experience.
Wonderful. You answer one of my questions there. I was going to ask about how many hours of gameplay. So it's definitely a fairly lengthy game. There's a lot of meat on the bone. One of my favorite games, I have a feeling that Half-Life Alyx is going to be my favorite VR experience once I get into it. I'm sure there's a lot of people listening that would agree with me. I'll let people know once I play it. But up until this point, my favorite VR game has been Superhot VR. And I was crushed, absolutely soul crushed, when I beat it in about 2.5 hours or 3 hours. It was pretty short. It was one of the first games in a long time, Superhot VR, that made me just thirst for more of it. So I love hearing that Half-Life Alyx is such an engaging title, AAA VR title, and there's actually meat on the bones of the game. How do you feel about the mechanics? Do the mechanics bother you at all, or what do you feel about that?
They don't, no, I mean, it's probably because I'm used to playing so many of these first-person, like, action-y type of games in all these other different formats and different headsets over the years now, that it just feels extremely natural because, again, they've iterated on what's been done before and just made it even smoother and more a little easier to play in some respects. There's a couple fiddly little things here and there. Like one of the main ways that you interact with shooting, for instance, is you pick up and grab things using gravity gloves. You have gloves instead of a gun. So you're kind of using the force to grab things. And that took me a good couple hours to just get used to doing naturally because, it's a weird little movement. So I would constantly bring things to me and I wouldn't quite grab them. And then when you grab them, you're supposed to put them over your shoulder in a backpack that's, not there.
Yeah.
And there's like a tiny, tiny little space in real world space where you need to let go of the item. And again, for those first few hours, I was constantly dropping items on the ground. Just dropping them as I'm trying to pick them up with the gloves and then dropping them in the backpack and they fall on the ground and then I'm dying and there's a head crab eating my face. And so that took a little bit of getting used to, partially, I think, because of the index controllers. I'm guessing because it has this finger tracking grip strength thing going on. And if you're not gripping quite in the right way or the fingers aren't held down exactly the way that they want, it doesn't really work. But, once you get used to it, it's just learning the rules of this particular way of interacting with things. I do like some of the other changes they made, though, like, so you don't have to, with the index controllers, you don't have to grab onto the guns, for instance, as strong as you do in some of the other games. Some of them, if you let loose your grip with your actual hand, the gun falls to the ground. There's none of that here. So the gun's just always in your hand as long as you have it selected in your inventory. So little things, little tiny quality of life things. I just wish they'd fix like the backpack weirdness.
Yeah. Would you say that in terms of mechanics and integration between the user interface and the mechanics, would you say that it is the best, or if not one of the best implementations of VR gaming thus far?
Yeah, it's definitely one of the best. I appreciate that the way that they've made it very minimal. There's no HUD or anything. You just kind of look, basically you got like a watch almost, but it's just a little display on your glove on your left hand. And that'll show you things like, your health points or, ammunition, things like that. But for the most part, a lot of it's done. You don't even have to look at that. You're playing as Alyx and she's constantly telling you, just sort of giving you a verbal reassurance of things that are going on. Like when you're pulling into your backpack, you're not looking physically, you're just reaching your arm behind you and pulling something out of your backpack. And she'll be like, oh, I've only got 2 of those left, or there's only a few of those, so be careful. And, she's just sort of talking to herself, but it keeps you aware of what's going on. So it really streamlines that so you can just completely focus on the action or the exploration or the puzzle solving or whatever it happens to be. They've done a really good job with that. And also with the first person exploration in general, I've had a lot of these type of games where you're just going up and down and all around and crouching and crawling and going throughout these gigantic environments like in this, and you get very, very disoriented, or some of the wonkiness with crouching and walking at the same time can be odd, but again, they've completely nailed that, in my opinion. I haven't gotten lost, or there's no map, but there's no need for it. It's just it's a very straightforward, like taking you on a path. Classic Half-Life in that respect. More so Half-Life 2. It's less windy pathways, but they stick to what they wanted to do, and they made it happen in a very, very pleasing way, aesthetically and just kinesthetically, I suppose. The feel is right.
You are creating. You're making me want to play. I swear, after I get off this interview, I'm jumping into Oculus and I'm freaking downloading Half-Life Alyx. One last question about Half-Life Alyx, and then I have a little bit of a pondering, if you'll humor me and ponder along with me. But the first real question is, how a lot of VR games have the comfort settings, I guess, the comfort warnings before. This is a comfortable game. This is an intermediate game, or whatever. This can cause queasiness if you're sensitive. You know what I'm saying? What do you call those? It's kind of like the comfort level, comfort index of the game. What would you say the comfort index is of Half-Life Alyx, and can you change that setting?
You can definitely change it. By default, it is extremely forgiving in the way that traversal happens and all that. You've got like your right stick or the equivalent in your right hand just for turning. And then on the left, it's for teleporting or blinking, as they call it.
Yeah.
And so that makes it, like about as comfortable as you can possibly get in a first person exploration thing.
Awesome.
But there are, of course, totally free options too if you want to just walk around like you would in any other FPS, or some of the other options for like smooth turning and other things like that. Mm-hmm. So if you want to, make it like just kind of a traditional FPS, but you got a headset strapped to your face, you can.
Right.
A lot of people find that a little bit queasy, but I found even that was done very well, because there's a lot of other like some of the things that they've done with, I guess it's like predictive head tracking or movement or something. It's not as I don't know. It feels less like I'm on an FPS roller coaster and more like I'm just kind of slowly going around. I think the walking speed has something to do with it. They've slowed it down enough and made it very smooth.
Okay.
So that, I haven't got motion sick or queasy at all playing this, and I definitely have in some others.
Wonderful to hear. I think, there's some games that I prefer to have the hand controllers, and there's some games, flight sims, I prefer just to have the 360, the Xbox 360 controller or whatever Bluetooth controller. I prefer the Xbox One S controller paired to the computer. But for flight sims, I like having the physical controls in my hand like that, and flying around like that, and just moving my head around, because you got to figure with a flight sim, you're sitting in the cockpit, so where are you going to move really anyways? So in games like that, where it's a game where you are, I guess, on rails is a good way to put it, I like to have, it's okay with me to have the physical joystick, the physical Xbox 360 controller, versus I would imagine in Half-Life and Super Hot VR and all those games, the individual hand controls are much more preferable. So it sounds like Half-Life Alyx allows, like you said, so many different options to make the play as comfortable as possible for the individual. So that's wonderful to hear. And here's the pondering. Switching gears a little bit, just a little bit. Would you like to see, and I think that I would, but would you like to see a Portal VR game?
Oh, yeah.
Easy.
Absolutely.
Easy.
I don't know how well that it would work in the traditional sense of like all the bouncing around and everything that Portal has.
I was just thinking about that. Yep.
That's one thing that they've done in Half-Life Alyx. There's no jumping. There's no bouncing around. None of it.
Yeah. And
you cannot jump at all.
And as
well, you can, but you can, but it's like there's the way that they do it is not like you're just hopping or whatever.
Yeah.
You're just sort of like pulling yourself up onto, a ledge, and then you're up on the ledge. You're like when you look and hold a button on a ladder, you just, and you're at the top of the ladder immediately. There's no going up and down in it, because that honestly seems to cause the most queasiness. They just got rid of all of that.
So as I'm talking about it, it's one of those things where the moment it comes out of your lips, I'm thinking all of Portal is coming flooding back to me. There are times in Portal where if you're just staring at a 19-inch computer monitor, that it makes you feel a little bit seasick when you go through a portal like sideways or upside down, and it flips you back around real quick to be, feet down. That stuff is unsettling. Just looking at a computer monitor from 3 feet away, with VR, it would make you absolutely puke.
Yeah, it does actually, and I've actually tried. There's like a fan-made VR mod for Portal. I believe it's Portal 2. I don't remember which, but years ago, it was just, they sort of shoehorned it together, and some sort of wrapper or something they put on top of it, and you can play it sort of in VR, and it's not. It's not ideal. It is not ideal. It absolutely made me sick in about 30 seconds. So they'd have to, they would do what they do with this and figure out what to simplify and what to change around. I mean, for instance, Alyx, they've completely changed the entire strategy of like the enemies and the way that they work and the way headcrabs attack and the way zombies attack and the way combine soldiers come at you in different directions. Like that's completely changed in order for it to be a little bit more forgiving on the player, because they know the player is not going to be running around and vaulting and, sprinting like they did in Half-Life 1 and 2. They're going to be fumbling around with some of the controls sometimes and trying to reload. I mean, reloading is a whole thing. So you got to like pull out a thing from your backpack and eject the magazine and put it in the gun and click the button. And then, so there's all these things that the player is going to be doing other than just running around and shooting like an FPS. So they've sort of dumbed things down where they need to and really simplified certain things, but yet elevated other things that you can do only in VR. You know, a lot of the puzzles are very three-dimensional, and I think that the way that they got creative with those puzzles, I have no doubt that they could really make a Portal VR exclusive thing. And, you know, they've done like little Portal demonstrations in Aperture Science already. And those were great. You know, they're just those tiny little 5-minute experiences they've done. So I'd love to see that. They would just have to, you know, I'm sure they would spend a good amount of time rethinking the entire core of the game.
Right. And if they can do it in a way, like we've been talking about, like you've been talking about, where they implement these changes to make it more palatable for VR, but it does not diminish the series at all. It is still very definitively a Half-Life game, even with the kind of changes in mechanics to make it, you know, palatable for VR. If they could do that for Portal, that would be completely wonderful. Is there any other little points to Half-Life Alyx you'd like to make that maybe I skipped over?
You know, I don't know. There's just, I would say that it's also much more of a survival horror game than any of the previous ones. It's probably the most terrifying thing I've ever seen.
Okay. Nice.
It is absolutely just, one of those where I've had to put the headset down repeatedly.
Yeah.
Due to the heart rate monitor is like, hey, you're freaking out. And it's like, okay, well, yeah, probably. It's you know, that's sort of the nature of VR. Like horror games in VR are intense anyway.
Yes.
But this, they definitely lean hard on, and they're not afraid of jump scares. They're not afraid to, you know, just throw you in absolute pitch black for an hour at a time. And you've got basically nothing to go on but a teeny little one-directional flashlight on one of your hands. So yeah, you have to like reload completely blind and stuff. It's nuts.
And does it get you sweating, legitimately sweating? Like I was sweating when by the time I finished Super Hot VR, I probably burned, I don't know, a couple hundred calories easy. I was sweating. I was sweating and sore. Does Alyx Half-Life, and it's a good thing. It's a good thing that it gets you moving like that. Does Half-Life Alyx kind of do the same?
Very much, yeah. If I didn't have, you know, my thermostat set down to like 62 degrees, it would be an absolute sweat fest. I mean, I'm still changing the visor like cover and everything every so often just because it gets gross. But it's one of those where the intensity is very high, and you know it's a long game, and there's a long stretch of it where you're just stuck in this horrifically dark, horrible environment, and there's dead things and undead alien things and all sorts of stuff just coming at you, and you're just, well, like, okay, well, yeah, it's a great experience if you're into that kind of a almost an Alien-esque kind of thing, which you know Half-Life's always been inspired by to begin with, but even more so here, or you know, a bit of a first-person Resident Evil 7 kind of thing. And it's really good. And
there are plenty of people who are into the horror genre and who are just going to jump at the horror VR genre, and Half-Life. I can't wait. I seriously, after we're done, I'm downloading Half-Life Alyx. Okay, it's got the LGR seal of approval. That means GTR, Geek Therapy Radio, has to do it too, and I will. Side note, it sounds like, it's the understatement, that it's such a good game. The mark of a good VR game to me, one of the first check boxes to check off with a good VR experience, VR game, is that it makes you forget you're wearing a headset.
Yeah.
So that's one of the biggest hurdles still to me when I'm playing VR. If I'm not playing something that's engaging me the entire time, it has to distract me from the very real fact that becomes real with the progression of time, that there's something strapped to your face, especially if you wear glasses. I wear glasses. I know Clint. Do you VR with contacts, or do you keep your glasses on?
I take them off because I'm nearsighted, so it's to like a slight degree where I can see well enough without them when I'm looking at really close-up VR lenses like that. Mm-hmm. So it works decently enough.
Yeah.
So I just go without glasses. But it's one of those things where I'm still very conscious of it, and especially with higher end headset, they got these big old chunky cables. You're constantly tripping over them if you don't have it. Even if you do have it mounted to the ceiling or something, it's just like, oh man, it's you feel it tugging every so often because you get so into the game. Or I'm in a relatively small space. It's only a 10 by 10 foot room. Well, actually, it's probably a little smaller than that because there's furniture in there. So I'm constantly accidentally reaching into the wall or seeing that barrier grid pop up in front of me, and that takes me out every time. But that's just sort of the nature of it.
Yeah, I'm reaching out and I'm touching the my Oculus sensors. They're right here on my desk, spaced maybe 3 or 4 feet apart, and my room is about the same size. So my borders, I've got it all. I've got my safe. What is it? Safe zone. What do you call it? The fencing.
That sounds about something like that. Zone, space, something.
So I've got enough room to kind of to lean around and maybe take a step, a pivot here or there. But it's good that it's always the most important checkbox to me is that it can help you at least temporarily or put off the feeling that in the self-awareness that you do have something that weighs a couple pounds on your head and you're not really there. Then again, if it's a horror game, maybe you want to be reminded that you're not actually in a hell on earth or whatever.
It's interesting too, because there's another character that's constantly talking to you throughout the game. And there's a lot of moments in there where Alyx is just freaking out, at all the elements. And so he's constantly trying to talk to you like, okay, you're all right. You just make it through this one next little section. And, there's always that sort of self-aware kind of writing that Valve is very well known for. It's good stuff.
Absolutely. Okay. We've talked most of the time about Half-Life Alyx. That's a mark of a good game. I'm getting it when we're done here. But I mentioned a few sentences ago, Hell on Earth. So speaking of Hell on Earth or Mars or wherever, what do you think about Doom Eternal?
I loved it. I really enjoyed it a lot more than I did 2016 even. And
really?
I already really enjoyed that game, but this is it's a very different experience than that was, oddly enough. It doesn't feel like a direct sequel so much. It almost feels like a spin-off. It's very different. But it's good, man. It's insanely good. Probably the best shooter I've played in a good few years in terms of that kind of just over the top bombastic insanity, almost like a I don't even know what. You want to talk about an adrenaline rush just from a traditional like FPS, that right there had me just completely buzzing in my seat, where it's just like you finish a firefight and you just jump up and just
Yes. Would you say, you said it doesn't feel like just a direct linear sequel. It's different in a good way?
For sure, yeah. Like story-wise, it picks up pretty much directly after, a little bit after. There's a bit of a time jump. But, other than that, it's a sequel. It's a straight-up sequel in the sense that it takes what it has, or what they had established in the last game, and builds on it and evolves it in such a way that it almost doesn't feel like a sequel. It just plays like such a different game that it's kind of hard to describe. I mean, I did describe it when I reviewed it, but
right.
It's like it's like the difference between like a pizza and a calzone or something. Like the ingredients are the same, but man, you're going to be eating them totally differently and using different utensils and just digging into them in a totally different way. Like they're both super tasty, but they're totally different.
That's a really wonderful way to put it. So obviously I mentioned earlier, I have to reserve my own personal review for it because I haven't played it yet. I thoroughly enjoy Doom 2016. So I have no doubt I'll enjoy Doom Eternal, but I can't give my critic score of it or anything right now. I got to play it first. But that being said, nowadays, as of recording right now, under self-quarantine and social distancing and everything, it is impossible to go online if you're a geek or a gamer and not see somebody talking about, obviously, Half-Life Alyx or Doom Eternal. By and large, most of the reviews I've seen, the response to Doom Eternal has been, as Steam would put it, overwhelmingly positive. I've only seen one one person, and I forget who it is. It was on Twitter. There always has to be one person to go against the grain, I guess, to keep us honest, whatever you want to call it. But he said something that I couldn't, that really had me scratching my head as to how old this person was and if they actually played the game or not. I know I have no room to talk because I have not played the game, but I've been playing Doom since I was a child in elementary school, trying to find the 4 shareware Doom discs and I don't want to admit making copies of it, but I'm sure there was a copy of the floppy somewhere in there. One of his critiques was, he went down a list of critiques, there's 4 or 5 critiques. He said, what is it? The hellish ambiance. He didn't like that. And I was, are you being ironic? Are you making a real statement here that the hellish ambiance was, you didn't like the hellish ambiance? Have you ever played any Doom? Ever. That is what it is. Either he was an amazing troll and just snuck that one critique in there among valid criticisms, or he legitimately maybe misses the point of Doom. Do you have any Do you have any commentary on how was the hellish ambiance for you, Clint?
It was great. It was just as hellish and great as I was hoping. Lots of pentagrams and 666s and demons, and I mean it's it was actually one of the things that I kind of didn't like as much about 2016 is because they didn't go as far as I wanted them to. Yeah. With the hellishness, I thought that they could have gone full on hell. It should have been much more intense, and I wanted to see crazy torture dungeons with thousands of souls being mangled, and that's all here. It's right, and that's just the actual hell dimension. Of course, there's the hell on earth part too, which in Doom 2 left a lot to be desired. Right, there's maybe a little bit of an imagination you had to have in order to sort of imagine that this was actually hell on earth. Imagine that. You don't have to imagine that anymore. You've got just straight up cities, being torn down and just lava flowing through them. There's horns and spikes and flesh demons and monsters and gargoyles just flying around. It's like stepping into a heavy metal album cover. It's wonderful. Master!
Maybe you should put on, do you have any Metallica vinyls or Megadeth or anything like that?
Yeah, a little bit of each.
Okay, so that's a good question right there. The soundtrack to Doom has always been iconic, to put it lightly. How's the soundtrack to Doom Eternal? Is it one of those games where what I often do sometimes is I put the music volume slider all the way down, just leaving the sound effects and everything, and then I put a record on or some other music playing on whatever instead of the in-game music? Is the music in Doom Eternal good enough to maybe not turn down? Is it good music?
If you like Doom 2016's music, then you're probably going to love this because it takes that and pushes it much further in the realms of glitch, electronica, metal, gent, darkness. It's highly twisted and odd, and I mean, there's a lot of these tracks now have really dark vocals to them. He got 30 or 40, the composer, 30 or 40 metal musicians to act as a metal choir. So Nice. It's just all of these great vocalists just singing out these just dark incantations and stuff. And it is very, very twisted. And it's also interactive. I don't know if I even mentioned that in my own review, but there's an interactive element to it that's very cool. Anything that you do just about is going to be affecting the musical score. So you start getting different chord progressions and different instruments and different parts add up the more the energy of the action intensifies. Awesome. So it's constantly building you a custom soundtrack as you play. So you're never going to hear the same thing exactly twice because it's just beat to beat. It matches the energy and it's awesome.
So cool. So freaking cool. So after this interview, if I go and buy one game, and we'll include Animal Crossing in this. If after here, what do you think? If you could only buy one, if you didn't have any, Clint, what would you go and get after this interview?
Well, considering you have a VR headset, I would say that Alyx is the clear winner here, just in terms of it being like absolutely like nothing I've ever played. In terms of just engagement and detail and Half-Life-iness. It's that's on another level. Like that feels like looking into the future a little bit, whereas Doom Eternal and Animal Crossing feel like the absolute best of the present. In terms of like top-notch first-person action shooter game and just top-notch, comfy, relaxing, hanging out on an island with animals game. It's they're two sides of the same coin. Like, yeah, they both are very comforting in their own odd, escapist way.
Oh my gosh! Oh, what was that game on the Wii that was black and white but super gory? Like the blood was red. Do you remember what I'm talking about?
Mad World.
Mad World. So it's like, well, would you like to play Mad World or would you like to play Nintendogs? What mood are you? What mood are you feeling?
It's quite that. Yeah, Maybe there's a little bit more of a life simulation element that I'm quite digging in Animal Crossing. It's got that whole building a village and making your own existence. There's a lot of creativity involved there. Whereas with Doom, the creativity is all about like, how do I creatively rip this Doom's intestines out and strangle him with them? Because like it's just ridiculous. The over the top nature of everything about it. It's a lot more cartoonish. It's almost comical. Like it's a very slapstick, Looney Tunes-esque kind of thing. Like it is just, and they purposely went that way. Because apparently they said if you made it too realistically, graphically violent, it just made people grossed out. But when you do it this way, you're just laughing because it is just completely absurd. The things that you're doing to these poor demons.
These poor demons. These poor demons.
They didn't deserve this. Sure, they're a hellspawn, but like
they got drafted. Yeah, they got drafted. They didn't volunteer for this.
Yeah. There's no dignity at all. You're just going around ripping and tearing and having a great old time.
So, but that said, after you play Half-Life Alyx, Animal Crossing would be a good escape. It's kind of like when you accidentally, not to get too morbid with this, but when you accidentally see, like a real dead body somewhere, it's like, all I want to do is watch Doug cartoons now for 3 hours to get that out of my, that feeling out of my head.
Yeah, it's a great palate cleanser. Very much doing that too. I'd go through and just survive some horrible thing, in Half-Life Alyx, and it feels like I've been through a war for the past 3 hours. And so, so it's like, okay, taking the headset off, get the heart rate down, get some water, and just relax, sit on an island, and like just go fishing for the next hour and a half.
So, Animal Crossing or Stardew Valley?
I've never played Stardew, actually.
Neither have I. All my friends, every time I get on the freaking Switch, it just says all my buddies are playing Stardew Valley, and apparently I really need to get that. But I don't know, man. Now that I'm Animal Crossing,
I've never played. Actually, I've never played an Animal Crossing until this one. This is my first time playing one, but the hype was just so real. I'm like, there's nothing else to do. I may as well pick it up and see what it's like. And I'm very much a fan of it. Now I'm thinking I would probably enjoy Stardew now. Having played this, I'm really enjoying this loop, and it sounds like Stardew is a little bit more intense. There's more of a threat of like failing, for instance, whereas with Animal Crossing, there's no failing whatsoever. Like you're taking out the home loans and stuff, and there's no interest and no deadline to pay it off.
Nice.
So, okay.
One of the fascinating things about Animal Crossing is how multi-generational it is. I think I read a story recently about some old lady in like her 90s or something who was showing off all of her accumulated, I don't know, stuff, the size of her game, the world that she's created for herself in Animal Crossing. And it was just absolutely jaw-dropping, the amount of time that this woman has put into Animal Crossing, all the way back to, playing it on the DS and 3DS and different platforms.
I can see why you would want to. One thing I don't know, so somehow I didn't realize is that the entire game takes place in real time with the real world. Like it's synced to the actual real clock.
Yeah.
So
real-time clock.
I'm playing a lot of times during the night, so I'm only seeing things that happen during the night. But the thing is, there's things happening throughout every part of the day, during every day of the week, in different seasons. And there's like in-game holidays and, weather changes and all sorts of different things that are happening minute to minute. Like the world is living right now as we're talking.
Yeah.
It's just sitting over there in my Switch having fun. and I'll come back and there's going to be like, oh, somebody else moved in down the road there, or there's another item that came up for sale, or somebody started crafting this, or there's just a constant like an urge really to come back to it every single day, multiple times a day, for a little bit every time. And that's the really like the way that you play it. It's incredibly compelling on a very simple level, though. It's just like you don't feel like you're going to lose out so much, but you could do better if you were to go back and check it every few hours.
So you walk into somebody's house in Animal Crossing and they've got the reel-to-reel and they're playing Half-Life Alyx. So right. You walk back out and you go about your business. Changing gears a little bit. I know I've kept you. Are you still good for a few minutes?
Sure.
All right. Back to Doom, not just Doom Eternal or Doom 2016 or anything like that. We're going back in the Wayback Machine. How old were you? What was the first Doom you played? And how old were you?
Doom 1, the shareware release that Christmas. So a friend of the family had it, and he had just downloaded it off a bulletin board service that day. Like, it was just a couple of days, I think, after it had first launched. So I don't even think the full game was out yet. So it was 1993.
I was
7.
Okay. Yeah, so I was thinking 93 or 94. Side note, the first South Park episode, I think, was technically online around the same time, sometime in the mid-90s. No one had any clue what South Park was, but I remember my best friend's brother, he built a PC, and he built it in several shoeboxes. He didn't have a chassis, he just had a modem in a shoebox here, a hard drive in a shoebox here, and just his room just had shoeboxes with wires running out of it, and that was his computer. And we went over to his house after school one day. His name was Greg, and he says, he probably cussed at us and say, "Nobody go into my room. I'm downloading something," which downloading anything back then, especially a video file, was usually a multi-day process, if not all day or all night, even at 56K. So I was very mystified because at that time I had internet. I had Prodigy internet, and You've Got Mail and all that good stuff. But the idea of watching a video on the internet, let alone downloading a video on the internet, let alone downloading music, anything that wasn't a MIDI file over the internet, was mind-boggling and mysterious to me. And what he had downloaded was it was a rip of that VHS tape that Trey Parker and Matt Stone sent around to different Hollywood people, and then it went viral. It was a VHS that went viral, and somebody copied,
like a Christmas Jesus something or other, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a fight between Jesus and Santa Claus, and it was
a friend of mine downloaded it back then too.
Yep, and it was literal construction paper, and we watched it, and I would say, so this is all tying in with Doom, because it was all around the same time. That is when, 93, I was also 10 years old. I was born in 83. So that was a time when I remember my heart sinking. Like, I had never seen anything like Doom before in my life. I had just seen Mortal Kombat at 7-Eleven like a year before that, and I saw Kano rip a guy's heart out. And it's laughable now. It's laughable. I would imagine the average 10-year-old now has been just inundated with that stuff. They're running around playing Doom Eternal, and they're not thinking anything of it.
Yep.
But back then, I'm giving my experience, and I'm going to ask your experience. My experience was I actually felt like, I won't say dirty. My mom was pretty, what's the right word for it? Protective, I guess. She's pretty religious, and she tried to protect us from all that kind of stuff. So, and she did a pretty good job, which is why the first time I saw Kano rip a guy's heart out in Mortal Kombat at 7-Eleven, I felt sick. That's a good way to put it. That depiction of gore made my heart and my soul feel sick, like almost like a big lump, like I felt like I was going to throw up. But I will say, being a little boy and seeing it more often, all I wanted every day when I went to school was to find somebody with freaking disc 3 of Doom shareware so I could find out whether or not my Packard Bell 386 could run it. What was your experience the first time seeing gore like that, and the inevitable where you wanted to play the game all the time? Get the game yourself.
I honestly don't recall the first gore encounter. Like, I mean, Doom had to have been an early one. You know, that or like Wolfenstein maybe, but yeah, Doom was definitely more graphic. And I specifically remember seeing that first level for the first time. You know, just the friend of the family was playing it there on the computer, and I was just watching in awe. Like, for one thing, it was 3D. That was nuts.
Yep.
And the fact that everything looked so vivid, you know, I vividly remember those green vats of slime.
Yeah.
And that one part of E1M1, and like just killing the zombies, and then he grabs a shotgun and blasts an imp open, and I'm like, whoa! And it was about that point that my parents came into the room and were like, you know what? He's 7. He probably shouldn't be watching this. And then, you know, I couldn't, you know, they're like, okay. So they like turned it off and put on Commander Keen instead.
Yeah.
But after that, it was pretty much burned into my brain for years until I finally got to like actually play it for myself. And at that point, it was I think it was Doom 95 had come out. And our Windows 95 machine, I just downloaded that very legitimately, I promise. Downloaded a copy and played the crap out of it. I mean, it was kind of dated at that point. It was probably 96, 97. But at the same time, didn't feel dated. Like, it felt very fresh.
No. I played through Doom 2 just a couple weeks. I mean, I played through Doom 1 and Doom 2 just a few weeks ago. I put it on hope my boss isn't listening, but I do have DOSBox on the computer at work, and it's basically because I like to open up emulate Windows 3.1 and use word processors and stuff in there. But I was tinkering around with Doom 1 and 2. Since I have it's in my Dropbox, I was able to come home and actually play. Good save there, Johnny. Play Doom 1 and Doom 2 all the way through. And after enough time goes by in between playing, they are still very fun games. Pressing, IDKFA, IDDQD, pressing 5 to immediately go to the rocket launcher, and then just melting demons. It doesn't get much better.
I gotta say, that threw me way off in Doom Eternal when they changed all of the hotkeys for the weapons. It bothers me because in that game there's no pistol. So all of the weapons are thrown off. So like I kept pressing 2 to go to the shotgun, and nope, that's the assault rifle now, and like number 1 is the shotgun. Number 3 is, I think, the plasma rifle. Number 4 is the rocket launcher. And I'm like, oh no. So I kept switching to the wrong thing for like the first couple of hours because it was so hard coded into that Doom 1 and 2 mentality. But I go back and play those games just about every year, and they're fantastic.
And one of the things back in the day, you mentioned, first of all, it was 3D. That was mind blowing. There's this thing that happens, and are you still good on time?
Oh yeah, you can do whatever you want with this.
Okay, there's these rose-colored glasses that we have on when we remember video games from our childhood. I don't remember pixels. Do you remember pixels?
No, I didn't even know what a pixel was.
Right.
Until who knows?
No. So in my mind, Doom, it wasn't a pixelated mess. I mean, it's not a mess, but you look back on it now, obviously. I mean, if you're running 640 by 480, that was absolute monster baller status. Usually what you had to do with the original Dooms is press the minus button all the way till it got as small, as small as it could to run beyond 10 frames a second to become playable. But I don't remember the pixels. And I mentioned not several years ago, a couple years, one of my early episodes where I mentioned no. It was a YouTube video I made about the Game Boy camera, where I basically mentioned that, when you look at the Game Boy camera now and pictures you take with the Game Boy camera now, it is pixel vomit. You can't, it's very hard to tell what's going on unless the lighting conditions are absolutely perfect and, whatever the subject of the photo is fills the entire frame and is well lit. But back in 96 when I got the Game Boy camera and was just playing it with my Game Boy Pocket, which came out the same year. No, Game Boy camera is 98. 96? I think they're both 96. They're both very close. Regardless, I'm getting sidetracked. Even though it was a pixelated mess, Game Boy was 160 by 160, I think, and the actual frame of the Game Boy camera on the screen was even less than that. Let's say maybe 140 by 140 tops, maybe, for the pictures. We had, what you mentioned earlier, imaginations that filled in the gap. So when you took a picture of a tree, there's no way you could see the individual leaves on the tree, but our brains filled in that gap. Oh yeah, this is the pine tree in my front yard. Oh yeah, this is my friend Steven 100 yards away down the playground, which effectively on the Game Boy is like 2 pixels. But like really, but you knew that it was your friend Steven. So those games hold up really, really well. Pixels aren't a bad thing, and you can see it in modern third-party games with what they call it, 8-bit anime, 8-bit style, 16-bit style.
Yeah, a lot of them call it 8-bit, and it's like, that's 13. That's 60 whatever bit. It's like some other kind of bit. They're just trying to make up a term, and it's just like, no. It's a pixelized aesthetic is definitely a thing, though. The whole independent community is engaged in creating things like that, which is awesome because, I think that it was gone far too soon. I think we moved on far too quickly for it to really have matured into something great, which I think it has now. All the demakes and remakes or just retro inspired games that come out nowadays is pretty awesome. Like I was really impressed with however many years ago, 2016, I guess, when Doom 2016 came out, somebody demade the game and made it a whole pixelized version and put it back in Doom 1. So you got all the weapons and monsters and all the stuff from Doom 2016 in Doom 1. Nice. And it actually looks really good.
Nice.
I thought, it's just like you translate it down into that kind of an aesthetic and it still works, it's just solid design. That's all the thing that really mattered was whether or not it was well put together and whether or not
gameplay.
It was engaging enough to get your mind racing and filling in those blanks because, I certainly don't ever remember thinking that looked bad or anything weird like that, or it was too low res, or I never even, the small window, that didn't bother me until probably adulthood, I guess. And I'm like, why can't it go larger?
Yeah.
But you get spoiled by modern tech.
Small window, you just lean in closer.
Pretty much, yeah. You just get really close up to that CRT.
That's right.
And it looks better on a CRT anyway. It kind of adds that nice warm glow to everything.
And
makes it feel more magical, like it's a weird little world you're looking into.
A literal warm glow, and the static tickled your nose.
It did, yeah. Get your hair all standing up on end if you get too close.
Yeah. So, okay, so, I could talk about that stuff for hours. I'm glad I remembered this, maybe last question, unless something sparks something else, but one of, if not the most wonderful memory I have of Doom, specifically Doom 2, was the first game that I played over the internet with another human being. It was with my friend 2 or 3 miles away. You go into setup and you basically set up the connection that way, and you yell at your mom, "Don't pick up the phone, I'm playing with Nathan." Have you ever played the original Dooms like that? Way back in the 90s even? Over dial-up?
Not in the 90s or anything. I definitely played Duke Nukem 3D over IPX. So that was my introduction to that. But yeah, any of those old 3D 90s shooters that you can play online through a phone line, no less.
Phone line.
Straight up, low-speed dial-up.
Yep.
It was mind-boggling seeing your friend run around in your game.
Yes.
I especially liked when you could. I don't know if Doom 1 and 2 have a cooperative campaign mode, but I know Duke 3D did, and that was pretty nuts. So you could just go through the whole single-player campaign with like up to 7 other players or something. It was pretty crazy.
And you could usually in the game, I'm getting all excited like a little kid. You could tap T in Doom and start typing messages. So that was another brain melter, pardon the figure of speech in Doom, but brain melter that I could text. I could type dirty words or whatever to my friend while we're playing. What we wound up doing usually is both our characters would just stop and we'd just be typing jokes to each other over the very primitive chat. Like in Doom, the red text would appear in the top left or top right of the screen, and you just be like boobies, and then when they would read boobies, you would shoot a rocket at them. It was very easy to distract a 10-year-old boy and a 36-year-old man with typing that at the top of the screen. So it was an effective strategic way of doing combat over the phone lines. What was the last thing I wanted to ask? Something else came to my little brain compartments. I'm forgetting. It was a magical time. It was just a magical time. Oh, that was it. And I want to get your opinion on this, and this really will be the last thing. We're getting on about an hour here of a conversation. Do you still feel the sense of wonder at technology the way we felt growing up in the 80s and 90s, where we had the Nintendo Entertainment System and then the Super Nintendo? Just absolutely, it was like magic. It was like witnessing a real miracle. It filled your heart with wonder and excitement, and the bit wars were very important to us growing up. We were very invested in the bit wars and Nintendo versus Sega and the new technology coming out. Laptops. I remember the very first laptop I got was a Pentium. Maybe it was just a Celeron, but it was a gray Compaq laptop because Compaq was built here in Houston and had a factory outlet here in Houston. And I mowed lawns for like 2 years to get the laptop, and I was just smitten. I was absolutely just, I don't know, thunderstruck, I guess, by the technology, that it was a computer that could fit in my backpack. I don't have so much of that wonder anymore, and it's hard for me to imagine a child born recently, within the past few years, the iGen as they're called, who are born with a tablet in their face and VR accessible, and it's hard to imagine that they would grow up with the same wonder as to the advancement of technology that we got to experience. Did you experience anything similar like that growing up, the magic of it all, or am I just basically ranting about nothing?
I mean, that's pretty much the entire point of my YouTube channel, is trying to revisit that feeling and sort of recreate it, jump back into it just a little bit, because that's hard to find. Yeah. I sound silly. Do I even know who I'm talking to? You have built an entire YouTube channel off of reliving that wonder. But the question is still the same. Do you, with modern technology, do you still feel any sort of sense of awe and wonder? I do not feel awe and wonder when I hear about the newest iPad Pro being released. Do you still have that sense of wonder? That consumer grade garbage, who cares?
Yeah.
It's just the same old thing over and over and over. It's iteration, and it's been that way for a long time.
Yeah.
So, that's whatever.
Right.
I'll still grab new things when it's a useful tool. I love a good camera upgrade or something, but it's not something that's going to blow my mind wide open. Now,
right.
Really good quality VR, that blows my mind open. Or like fully autonomous vehicles, that blows my mind. Things like that, experiencing that for the first time.
True.
That's pretty nuts. There's a whole other realm of just upcoming and emerging, augmented reality. That's another thing. When seeing that done well, like actual 3D objects in front of your face in real life, it's crazy. So, there's little bits of it here and there, but it's definitely, part of it's just because we've seen so much in 30-something years, and it's just like, it's nothing compared to seeing the first game running on a 486. But at the same time, I don't know. I'm thinking hopefully that there's going to be some kind of awe-inspiring thing for the kids now. I don't know what it's going to be. It's obviously not going to be the next iPad.
It's not going to be more resolution.
It's holographic or something. I don't know.
It's you're right. See, it's not going to be. Here's a good example. It's not going to be the jump from 4K to 8K. I struggle to believe that there's anybody out there who would get legitimately as excited going from 4K to 8K as we were excited to go from 8-bit NES to 16-bit NES. But like you said, there could be there's going to be quite a bit of awe and wonder once we get the augmented reality and holograms working and autonomous self-driving cars, like full autonomy. I think, and just VR that, if my glasses could fit the full Oculus Rift experience in it, but not have to be bound, it's just something. I already wear glasses every day. If it ever became a device like that, and maybe it will be, we can speculate all we want. Game streaming, GeForce Now and Google Stadia, maybe it will get to the point where, it definitely will get to the point where a good 95% of our computational workload is going to be done off-site. So now that I'm talking about it, and with Elon Musk putting up his grid of satellites in geosynchronous orbit with the Earth and broadband internet to all corners of the world, maybe we'll get to the point where Google Glass or whatever will just be in my glasses, and I just type a button, and all of a sudden I'm playing Half-Life Alyx just with my normal glasses. It's just being, GeForce Now'd right into my face, and that will be remarkable. So yes, I think there's some stuff coming down the pipe where we'll just, even us, you and me, Clint, we're old, we're 70 years old, and we'll just sit there and say, by golly, that's cool.
It reminds me of an interview I saw with Valve's founder, Gabe Newell. He was talking about some of the things that he wants to do or what he's inspired to do after doing Half-Life Alyx and everything. And his big thing is, a proper VR thing that beams directly into your eyeballs, or in the way he put it, or the thing he's more excited about is like a brain computer link interface. And he's like oddly into that, like very much believing that we'll have it within our lifetimes. He's like, it's not as hard as you think. We've tried some things. Like, what have you tried up there, Val?
Exactly.
What are you doing? You connecting computers to brains now? So they're trying to push it, so hopefully we'll be able to see something like that before we keel off from Corona.
Oh my gosh, Clint. Gosh. Maybe, you know what? Maybe there's a clone of you or me. Like we have a twin brother, a clone we don't know of. Maybe they got a prick of our blood, something like that. And there's this, we're getting dark here, but there's some lab, some Matrix style slushy tube somewhere with our clone in it. And Gabe is implanting these bionic game streaming processors right into our frontal lobes. Why did you have to put that into my brain, Clint? Why are we even talking about that?
It's the times we live in.
It's the times we live in. All right. So what would oh my gosh, how do I put this? Is there any advice or recommendations you can give to people who are self-quarantined or good distractions, turn off the news for an hour and get into a geek thing? My thing has been, hey, this is a good excuse to kind of rekindle old hobbies or discover new ones, maybe dust off that old Pentium 3 and see what you can do with it. What kind of... Your channel is all about that. LGR, Lazy Game Reviews, is all about that old stuff. So what is your recommendation for people sitting around who just think they have a bunch of junk? Do you think they should just go look through that junk and maybe see what it can do again?
Yeah, I say, why not? It's a great time to dive into some forgotten corners of an attic or a closet or something and just see what's still hanging around back there. You never know if there's a community that's popped up for it in the past 10 or 15, 20 years. I'm always kind of surprised what I dig up and then look into online thinking that I'm the only one that remembers it. And then I find like, oh, there's an entire dedicated subreddit just to this thing. Yeah. People are still writing software for it. And oh man, there's like a little device that somebody's made and 3D printed and I can plug it in and it makes it better, there's a whole gigantic hobbyist community of just speaking about retro tech and, or maybe not, maybe just, find something analog. I've totally been trying to do that more recently.
Nice. Yes.
Just unplug from everything for a little bit and and any excuse to just either get out of the house and enjoy some nature or, we can't really do that necessarily now. stay inside and mess around with, I don't know, like resurfacing a desk or something. I'm doing that now, putting some new wood grain veneer on there. It's great.
We know your affinity for wood graining, all the things. Is your you said you have an HTC. Is it wood grained?
No, too curvy.
You can put the veneer on there, just wrap it around and
yeah, well, I'm actually
vinyl?
thinking about getting some of my stuff hydro dipped because you can do that with a wood grain finish.
Debrand wood grain?
Yeah, hydro dip wood grain things. It's totally possible. They do it to like motorcycle helmets and all sorts of other rounded surfaces to put a really cool texture on it.
Yeah.
So you can just dip all sorts of things in there. Headsets, keyboards, mice.
CDs, Blu-rays. Just wood grain everything, your vinyl record.
Your hand, yeah, your whole head, whatever.
Yeah, it just depending on how crazy you're going in self-quarantine. Well, Clint, I don't have to say it, but I'll plug your channel. It seems ridiculous that somebody who is interested in my show wouldn't already know about yours, but maybe they've seen you come across their YouTube and they never gave you a try. So where should people go to find out more about Lazy Game Reviews?
You can just search the Googles or the YouTube for LGR, and that'll bring it up. It is the channel called that.
It is a channel called that. Last question. There's so many last questions. I know it might be annoying you at this point. Have you thought about, I know maybe I'm not. There's maybe a lot of people thinking about doing a podcast. Have you ever given a thought to doing your own podcast?
Yep, and that's as far as it's gone.
Thought, and then you get distracted by a Commodore.
Passing thought. I would totally do it if somebody else were doing all the work.
Yeah.
That's kind of not how it works, though.
Right.
So, yeah, it's a little too... Actually, I was just talking to David Murray, the 8-Bit guy, about that earlier today. Not really a podcast necessarily, but like doing something else, because everybody got so much downtime lately, and it could be kind of nice to have some other kind of format instead of just scripted YouTube videos to do.
Right.
But neither one of us really know. It's like, live streaming, I don't know. Podcasting, I don't know. Like, there's so many things that sound kind of cool, but then you look into the logistics and the work involved, and it's like...
I had this thought, as you mentioned it, I had this thought the other day. It maybe is a passing fancy, I don't know, but I'll run it by you. I thought about sending, I sent you the email earlier today. I thought about emailing you and David and Colin from This Does Not Compute and saying, hey, is there any friggin' chance, or maybe even Retro Man Cave, is there any chance that we could set aside an hour to all jump in and do a round table, like a 3 or 4 person round table, just talk about retro tech, any sort of geeky stuff. So don't if you get an email, I don't know if I pull the trigger on this and you get an email that's CC'd to David and Colin about doing a discussion, an interview. Is that something you think that might be, I don't know, possible?
Yeah, totally. As long as I'm not doing the legwork on the back end and edit it all together and mix everything and all that, that's the stuff that I just don't want to mess with, because I do all that normally for my own stuff. And then no. Such a nightmare when you have all these other people's files and things to work with. So
nope. I would be the dungeon master of this venture.
There you go. So I'd totally join in on the raid.
Right. So maybe I'll see that. I might put out the feelers. I might send separate emails first to David and Colin and whatnot, and see if that's even because I know not everybody, but there's more of a chance that we're all sitting around now, and maybe we might have an hour on an evening to do something like that. So we'll see. Just don't be surprised if I send you an email. All the stuff that we've been talking about for the past 10 minutes or so, that's not getting on the air. This might be extra, unedited.
Yeah, trust your discretion to chop it up how you need.
Right. I think that's it. I can't think of anything. If I did, then I'll just ask next time, I think.
Yeah.
Okay. So
one of these days, man, we'll have to just hang out after all this crap blows over, and
yeah, dude. I'm down. Like we said, if you're ever in Houston, hit me up. We'll do something with the DeLorean. That'd be fun.
Totally.
Dude, well, I've got the Commodore 64 and the Atari sitting right next to me. We could probably do something fun with that 80s stuff in an 80s car, just like a CRT.
Yeah.
Check out, oh my gosh, you're having an idea. Like, so I got the CRT, this Hewlett-Packard CRT. Like, check out my my in-car entertainment system, and I've got the CRT like up on the dash of the DeLorean. David said he might want to drag race the DeLorean, like have me come up to Dallas, and if he like did a review on a new Prius or something like that, like, let's drag race the DeLorean. Like, I'm down. You will beat me, but it would be fun. But yeah, we'll hang out next time the opportunity arises for sure. It'd be fun if you came to the radio station and poked around.
Yeah, one of these days. Man, I was hoping to come down to Texas actually just this month. I had a trip planned. I was going to make a couple of weeks of it, but obviously that is no longer. Everything that I had scheduled all year is canceled so far, except for I think one thing in September. That'll probably get canceled too.
Yeah.
So
I think I have you beat there. I was not supposed to, but my best friend, and he was the best man at my wedding. I've grown up with him. He lives in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. He moved there from the Netherlands. He's an American, but he works for a non-destructive testing company that does work all over the world. So they said, hey, you want to help us open an office in the Netherlands? So he went to the Netherlands for a few years. Hey, do you want to help us open an office in Kuala Lumpur? So we went to all the way across the world. But I was supposed to meet him there, and then we were going to go to Vietnam and ride motorcycles up the distance of the country, like from top to bottom. Have you ever watched Top Gear or Grand Tour or anything like that?
That's exactly what I was thinking when I did the Vietnam trip.
Yep, we were basically going to do our version of that. So we were talking about, at the very least, we're talking about, I was coming to Malaysia. Yeah, no, not happening. Nope. He was in South Korea recently, and that's one of the hardest hit. So yeah, if you can't make it to Texas, there's people who can't make it to freaking Malaysia. But
I can't even make it across town.
Make it across town. Traffic is wonderful right now, but we'll get through this. This is it may take a few months, but I think this is out. Some people say this is going to be our generation's depression. I don't foresee it getting to be, wiping your butts with corn cobs with no electricity and basically eating dirt.
We're already sold out of toilet paper. We're halfway there.
See, that's crazy.
I can't believe that.
It's absolutely mind-boggling. Especially, have you been to a grocery store within the past, few days?
No, actually, it's been about a couple weeks. I stocked up a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, and so the biggest thing that stood out to me that I noticed. Are you still rolling, by the way, by chance?
I am, actually.
Okay, all right, cool. Because I might use some of this for the extended unedited thing that I make available to Patreon, if that's cool with you.
All right.
Okay.
Yeah, sure.
So, and I know that they really like this kind of off-the-air type of stuff. So I went into the local... Do you have Randall's up where you're at?
No.
Okay, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. H-E-B, Kroger, I don't know what the heck, Aldi, whatever. It's the same anywhere. I stop in just to check if they have TP on the shelves, not thinking that they will, and of course they don't. So you look at the shelf of toilet paper that's missing, but here's what the difference from the Great Depression, I'm saying, in my mind. The toilet paper shelf is empty. You look 5 feet over to your left, and there is just so much food. There is rice and spaghetti and cereal and junk food and bologna and hamburgers and hot dogs and just 60,000 square feet of food and bread and everything you need to give yourself a heart attack 1,000 times over in one day. But the TP is gone. Like, what in the apocalypse you want to wipe your butt more than you want to eat? That's what's kind of boggling my mind. We're the, like, if taking a dump was an Olympic sport, the United States wouldn't even have to compete because we would be the grand champions just by a landslide. We know how to poop here because we have all the food in the world here. So what got into people?
Now we don't even have to compete because the Olympics aren't happening.
Right. But what made people think that we, with our American digestive tract, that we would ever run out of toilet paper?
Yeah, it's just the silliest thing. I don't understand that exactly, except that it's just people panicking.
Yeah.
And, they grab just a bunch of stuff, and then people, for some reason, grab some of that first. I don't know. Like, it was sold out even 2 weeks ago when I went shopping.
Oh, yeah.
That was 2 weeks. In fact, everything with alcohol in it at all was sold out. Even aloe vera gel, because that has a little bit of alcohol in it, was sold out. I'm like, this hasn't even really gotten crazy yet. And people are already just like unloading these kind of things from the shelves. And like, the toilet paper confused me, but then just thankfully it hasn't gotten too much worse in terms of all the other like necessities.
No.
If that's all that we have a shortage of, that's,
right.
I'm definitely much more worried about like the lack of medical equipment and masks and things for people that actually need it.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and if, I've seen some people say, hope everyone's doing fine in the apocalypse. Like, we got we still have a lot of stuff like running water. We still have running water. I would worry if the city ever said, you know what, we're thinking about cutting off the water supply, that might carry it, which it doesn't. By and large, the water is completely decontaminated, or so they tell us. There's no threat to the water supply, but that is exactly when I would, hey, maybe all those people on Coast to Coast AM, they might be onto something with all of this, because if they cut off the water supply, I've got solar panels. My whole house isn't converted to solar, but I've got enough solar panels and a pure sine wave inverter and stuff just to like run refrigerators, and I use it to charge my tablets and vacuums and lawnmower and stuff like that. So I can get by with some electricity to keep me connected, and I've got a couple radios, walkie-talkies and stuff too. But like water, if they ever start talking about restricting the water, then that's the only time where my tinfoil hat would come out and be like, all right, I'm scared now if they're talking about the water. But
yeah, that'd be a whole different situation.
Yeah.
Like, as far as outbreaks go, this is like, it could be so much worse.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very much worrying, of course, not to downplay it at all.
No,
but
right.
My goodness, it could be worse. Like if it was Ebola or something. Oh
Yeah.
my goodness. You would talk about a thing with just such a higher rate of mortality and, other things that could be so much more concerning, or transferring through water, for instance, or, transferring, just floating through the air and wisping around on the wind or something.
Yeah.
Like it's just, not like that. So thankfully it's not as bad as it possibly could be, because man, it's bad enough.
It is bad. I've heard a sentiment, something like swine flu killed, I don't know, however many hundreds of thousands of people, 1 million people, millions of people. Why are we freaking out about this? And we're like, well, what if it's because we don't want it to kill millions of people? What if we've learned from that stuff? And so I heard a doctor or a scientist put it perfectly, saying the absolute best. She was talking to the stir crazy people in self-quarantine. She says the best possible outcome for you individually coming out of this is to feel like you've done nothing, is to feel like it was all a waste of time. If we all collectively felt like this was a giant waste of time, then it worked, because that means that they were able to, flatten the curve, so to speak, get this thing under control. And you know what? Maybe we don't have to accept viruses that come into our lives and kill millions of people, in 1918 and the Black Plague and things like that. That the next time something like this has happened, first of all, we're going to have learned so many things from the reaction to this, so many things to put into place next time so it doesn't get so out of control. Second of all, we're going to say, okay, the coronavirus, the tally was a couple 100,000 people or whatever, and people are going to complain about that. It only killed 200,000 people. The Black Plague killed 20 million people or whatever. We overreacted to coronavirus. No, we reacted just right to make sure it was 200,000 or whatever it is, and not 1 billion. So the best outcome of this individually is to feel like it was a waste of time. If we felt like it's a waste of time, then the strategy worked. That's oversimplification. There's people, like you mentioned earlier, losing their jobs, and it's creating a monstrous hurt on people just around the world financially and with work, and I'm sure some personal structures are straining. But we'll get through it. That's all I'm saying. We will get through it. I feel like I'm preaching to you. We will get through it. We've been through worse, and we'll get through this.
Yeah, obviously on like a much less dire scale. When you look back at what happened with Y2K, all the massive amount of preparation there, and people felt like it was all a big waste of time, but that's because the preparation worked.
Right,
that's because all the fixes that went into place beforehand worked, and nothing major, like it didn't happen as bad as it could have been because, you know, people were doing something about it. Right. Imagine if we had prepared for this properly. Yeah. You know, that's what we got to learn from this, is we got to put in the infrastructure and everything to prepare for the next one.
Exactly.
This is not going to be the last thing.
Nope.
You know, we have one of these outbreaks every, 4 or 5 years, it seems like. And just this one that somehow has exactly the right set of circumstances to spread ridiculously in a very quick amount of time. And man, they keep finding stuff about it that's like, you know, even more terrifying, and just, you know, the way it maybe affects nervous systems and stuff. Yeah. You know, they just don't even know like what kind of lasting effects it could be, you know, giving people's lungs just scarred tissue and a bit of fibrosis. I mean, this is going to have really long-term lasting effects. So yeah, the people are saying it's not as bad as such and such. It's like, well, I mean, come on, that doesn't make it not bad. Right. Well, or not worth trying to stop, you know, shut everything down. It's like, yeah, we didn't shut those other things down, but this is a different thing. It's spreading in a different way. It's incubating in a different way. It's having different effects that we don't even know yet. Not to mention, we've never had any kind of medication for it, and much less any vaccine that's 18 months away. Like, yeah, it's such a different thing that I don't know how some folks are still not treating it seriously.
And they'll say most people recovering. The recovery rate is something like 90%, or it's pretty horrible as far as diseases are concerned. A 90% recovery rate, that's actually not good. That's a pretty terrible. That's a high mortality rate. But there are
it's still like the last 50, 60 times more deadly than like the flu and some of these other things. Right. So you know, just on a percentage level, it seems small, but you add that percentage, say everyone in the world gets it, we're still talking massive amounts gone. And I mean, like, I'm not okay with that. Yeah. So let's, much less when it's mostly folks with compromised immune systems and older folks too. Like there's, you know, there's some people that I know that are really good friends, and they've got like a combination of like asthma and diabetes, and they're goners if they get it. Yeah. So that's not okay at all.
My grandmother's 97 and my sister's quadriplegic. There's no freaking way either of them would survive it. There's no way they would survive a bad flu. So there are lives at stake, whether or not people want to be callous or ignorant of it. There's lives at stake, and the people who say, well, you know, only 3 out of 100 people are dying from this, whatever. I saw somebody put it very simply. Hey, if I gave you a pack of Skittles and 3 of them were poison, would you eat the pack of Skittles? The answer is no. Just leave the pack of Skittles alone. Just let's maybe err on the side of caution and leave the Skittles alone. Stay home and play Doom Eternal and Half-Life Alyx and Animal Crossing and bust out your old Commodore 64 and be amazed when you hook it up to a modem that there are still people on forums on the Commodore 64, not on the PC talking about Commodore 64, but actual plug your Commodore 64 into the internet, and there are people on other Commodore 64s posting new things. It's crazy. And this is the best excuse ever in modern human history to rediscover those things, to go to lazy game reviews and watch videos and re-spark some of that stuff. So, yeah, it is interesting seeing the shift in people's opinions overall. Of some of the folks that have even been kind of a little more critical of my videos as of late. Now they're just like, oh man, I'm so thankful that you're still making these things. Yeah. You know, I'm glad that I have some sort of a retro distraction or something to just get my mind off of it because I lost my job, or you know, I went through this thing. There's a couple of folks I know that have had it and then got through it, and they're just like, I didn't know if I was going to. And you know, watching your videos has helped. You know, just
a little bit, just a little bit here and there. And yeah, that kind of stuff makes you really rethink the entirety of what I'm doing. It makes me rethink it.
Yeah.
Just, does it really matter? Kind of no, but yes, it does at the same time. It's made me really introspective for sure.
That's a battle I have, and I've spoken about a few times on my own show is that, the self-doubts get in there and say, am I going to record something tonight? No one's going to care. It's not going to, even if someone did care, is it really of any substance? And then I remember I named it Geek Therapy Radio because it was meant to be, it is supposed to bolster that confidence in people. I end every show with telling people that they're loved, that they're worthy of giving love, worthy of receiving love, and they are worthy of their own self-respect. And that last line is what I pay a lot of attention to also myself. That last line of you are worthy of your own self-respect. Basically that what you're doing, it does matter. Even though the biggest, loudest critic in your head is your own voice telling you or trying to convince you that it's not worth it, what you're doing isn't worth it. It's a lie. It's a lie. Sometimes the little voice in our head is the biggest liar to ourselves. It's not the little, person having a bad day on YouTube taking it out on a comment on you or on me. It's our own little inner voice that can sometimes distract us. So when I say you are worthy of your own self-respect, that's like the hardest thing. It's easy for a lot of us, I think, to accept love. We may feel like we're not worthy of love, but if someone is doting on you and giving you stuff or smooching on you or whatever, like most of us will take that. It's almost impossible a lot of times to believe that you're worthy of your own self-respect. And I'm not a therapist or anything like that, but I just know from my own experience that that's a big thing to believe in what you're doing and push through those times where that voice is trying to convince you, don't upload this video. It's not worth it. But then you have people, like you said, commenting, hey man, this is really helping me get through a hard time. If it helps, so if you have 1.3 million, or you're on your way to 2 million or 3 or 4 million subscribers, whatever, if nobody had ever left a comment like that, if millions upon millions, 100 million people, 200 million people, whatever, billion people have viewed your videos, if one person was affected in a positive way and it gave them even just a shred of hope, because you never know where your video is going to catch somebody. They may be on the verge of doing something terrible to themselves, but they catch a new LGR video or an episode of Geek Therapy Radio, hits them in the right way. Even if it's just one person out of a 20 or 30 year career, 50-year career, then to me, that is what stomps out and mutes that inner voice saying it's not worth it. If it was worth it to one person, if it helped one person, then all of it was worth it. And I feel like I'm preaching again.
I mean, it's well said. I agree.
Yeah.
And it's a hard lesson to have, honestly, have to repeatedly learn myself, because it's, often those negative garbage comments, they're not saying anything I haven't already thought.
Right.
It's already there. I just feel almost like vindicated. It's like, oh yeah, I knew that sucked. And then, you have to sort of realign for me, seriously, every video, I got to realign myself and try to figure out, again, why am I doing this? Mm-hmm. Beyond just the whole trying to make a living thing, but it's like, okay, where did the passion come from?
Yeah.
What am I doing differently or not differently that I don't feel that anymore? Like what's that about? So I keep a whole list of good comments and letters and emails and drawings and artwork and cool things that people have sent me over the years that, check that out every so often and, remind myself, because otherwise it's way too easy to forget.
Right.
The daily grind, it just all starts disappearing, Or even sometimes watching some of my videos that are even just older ones, just trying to figure out, it's like, okay, what sparked me to even make that in the first place? Because right now I'm not feeling it.
Yeah.
So, it's a hard balance.
It's a balance. And I think a lot of people on the outside looking in, let's think of one of the things I do. Maybe it's because, in regards to YouTube, my channel is still small. I mean, it's about to be 3,000. It's grown by maybe 500% this year. Like for a small channel, it feels like a snowball, because I remember when it was 0. but they'll leave a comment, and then I'll click on their channel, like click to see, okay, well, what, because I'm waiting for that super negative, really, not offensive, but you can tell the person's they're really trying to get to your core. They're really trying to hurt you. So by default, I think that person is really hurting themselves. That type of negativity doesn't come from a place of a person who feels good about themselves. So first I feel bad for them, and I put it into context of that's not them hating me, that's them hating themselves, and no one has ever encouraged them, or maybe they didn't have the right guidance or encouragement or the right peer group around them to let them know their worth. But sometimes I'll click on the commenter's profile or whatever, and see if they have videos themselves. I'm like, it's usually, I don't comment on their stuff because obviously they're not trying. Well, all I'm getting at is they're not trying the same thing that we are. So when you're on the outside looking in like that, you can think, oh, Clint, he's not doing any work. Those YouTubers, the content creators, they're not doing jack squat. Well, they're not seeing the script writing and the conceptualizing and the editing and the hours and hours and hours and days that go into making one thing. It's like they think that just a video materializes. I turn on the camera and I did all these things, one take, one shot, and it was all just magically put together at the end. And there's no work that's involved there. But there is. You and I know that there is. And it's what you're saying, you're going back to the old stuff. What was that spark? And you try to find that spark again that you hope to recreate in whatever your latest offering is. And that's always the struggle. What was the spark for you to do the Atari, I think it was like one of the first videos I ever saw of yours, the Atari ST, but it was from Europe, I want to say. It was PAL. Yeah. And you were going through like, I had to get this converter and things like that. And it was just somebody having fun with a unique piece of gear that most people forgot about, but obviously a lot of people didn't forget about, because that's exactly why your channel grows. So it's about finding that spark and not beating yourself up if you don't have that spark. Like, why not you specifically, but who's holding the fire to my toes to do something like every day, to make something new every day, to put 8 additional hours in after work every day into putting something else out there. It's just the constant, like you said, it's that constant, it's a finding a balance. I guess that's the end of it. It's finding that balance in the work life and personal life. And I think this coronavirus stuff is helping, for better or for worse, a lot of people reevaluate, what's important to them, how much effort they put into things. So I don't know, maybe I'm rambling right now.
I mean, that's how it is. It's all this weirdness gets to you. It starts getting to me anyway. Yeah. Just sort of here at home doing my own thing. It's not necessarily any different than normal,
right?
But it kind of is. Just knowing that other people are going through something insane, and it's starting to get to me as well. Just even being aware that it's going on, but then, not having the freedom to go out and sort of shake up my own routine every so often. So I feel like I'm stuck in my own head, inside my own house, and so it's like right. What do I even do with all of this extra, me time that is, it's like being stuck inside of your own cubicle in your own office, except it's your home, so you can't really leave that cubicle. And there it is. But
it's hard to get out of your own head sometimes.
Yeah, it definitely is. I mean, I've set up a lot of things in my own work routine and all that to try to balance that out. I have another place that I work and do filming, but just haven't gone there in a couple weeks. So, or other places that I like to go and do scripting and stuff and do research, just different environments and shops and libraries, and nope, it's all gone. So it's an odd thing to just have it all like snatched out from under you, even when I know that, again, it's like so minor compared to what other folks are going through, but
Right.
at the same time, it's jarring to the point where, I don't even know which thing to pick up next or which project makes sense moment to moment anymore, because it feels like the whole balance is out of whack.
Mm-hmm.
So it's all weighted differently in my mind now. I found myself drawn to like less and less detailed projects as a result.
Right.
So.
Right. It's finding balance in this new normal. And then as soon as we get this new normal, it's going to go back to old normal again.
Let's hope.
Let's hope.
I don't even know if the old normal is possible at this rate. I think everything's going to change. I really do.
For the better,
I think a lot
hopefully.
of it's, hopefully for the better. Yeah. I mean, a lot of it's going to be for the better. I don't doubt that at all. I'm still optimistic about the overall outcome. It's just going to get nastier before it gets worse.
Yep.
Or before it gets better.
Yep.
It's going to get worse before it gets better.
Yeah, things naturally do. But yeah, man, if you ever want to work on something just with me, just reach out. If you want to do something different, I'm here. My phone's there. You got my number. We'll text.
Yeah, man.
I'm not holding your feet to the flames or anything, but just if you need a change of pace and I can help in any way, then I'm there. I'm here.
Well, I mean, this was good on its own. So Thanks for having me on again.
And that's where we cut off the interview. I told you this was going to be off the cuff and it was going to be slightly unusual from the norm. I know my patrons over there on Patreon, they're used to that. The sort of raw check 1 2 3 check 1 2 3 type of interviews that I put up there on Patreon. But my regular listeners who just follow the podcast may not hear so much usual kind of candidness. I mean, a big part of the show when I'm talking just by myself is being very candid with you, letting you behind the curtain, so to speak, on here on Geek Therapy Radio with what I do. But it's kind of rare when I have a guest on and we get so nitty gritty with real world topics. Generally in Geek Therapy Radio, I tend to indulge in our geek things. I'll fixate on a topic like I'm really into micro cassettes for some reason recently. So I'll fixate on stuff like that because the whole thing was that Geek Therapy Radio, it's kind of an oasis in the desert of politics. If you catch my drift, if you can appreciate that we're inundated with so much negativity and so much politics and so much entrenchment and so much people being at each other's throats and scare tactics and fear-mongering, I said, I'm just going to make a show, a podcast and a radio show that for now just airs here in Houston on AM radio. That's kind of an escape for a minute. That doesn't trivialize or minimalize the important things that are going on in the world. But you know what? I fully think that we have a lot more in common than that which drives us apart. I know that which drives us apart is the sexy thing to broadcast, is the sexy thing to podcast about. But here, we're just going to geek out about things. We're going to geek out about reel-to-reels and old Super Famicom disk systems and Commodore 64s and Atari STs and speakers and audiophile things and vinyl records and cassette tapes and CRT monitors and Lamborghinis and, I don't know, construction equipment, formulations of cement, whatever. Just whatever we want to talk about that week here in Geek Therapy Radio. So, I mean, you hear how excited I'm getting about it. If you like Geek Therapy Radio, be sure to subscribe to the podcast, like I mentioned almost 2 hours ago, and check out the Geek Therapy Radio YouTube channel. I just uploaded a whole video about whether or not the Q6600 Core 2 Quad from 2007 still has any viability in the year 2020. So I put that up on the Geek Therapy Radio YouTube channel where I can show you more cool stuff. Radio is cool, podcast is cool, but I can show you more cool things. Old Game Boys and glass screen lens replacements and little odds and ends and whatnots and Sony mini disc players. So yeah, thank you for listening to Geek Therapy Radio this week. I love you all. Thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. Remember, you're worthy of love, both giving and receiving love, and you are worthy of your own self-respect. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you in probably a couple days. Have a good one. Wash your hands.